Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Summoning Hour podcast, or perhaps welcome back. As we know, before video games, and with video games still, there has been play. A quick web search will take you back thousands of years and show you that early games of football or dice and board games have been around since early civilization, early congregation of people. So what we can find is that the technology and the methods have changed, but the need to gather, compete, cooperate, and connect has not. And that's the impetus of why the Summoning Hour exists. It used to be a podcast about collegiate esports and touched on game development and game developers and their history with games in its previous iteration prior to quarantine and COVID. But now it's time to bring it back in a time when the industry is as shaky as it is, with an unknown future or what it looks like as it's going to have to change and adapt to the times. Someone has to talk about it. Someone has to talk with everybody involved. And that involvement in games is no longer just with game developers or the people who have been making games or have stopped making games since that changing of the guard has happened. Now we need to be involving the audience now more than ever, because they're their own content creators. They're their own participants in that game development process. We know that it's different now than it was even back in 2000. So who am I to be talking about this as a reintroduction? Well, my career has been in video games. I started in QA and I've moved up into senior production, where I've been with companies like Undead Labs, ArenaNet, Wargaming, and Blizzard and Meta. So I've dabbled with some of your favorite games. I have been in those playtest sessions where there were no textures, no levels, and it was just an idea and it came from there. Or that level that is now your favorite, or that card that's your favorite, I helped make some aspect of it, help bring it to life and bring it together. You can find all of that on my LinkedIn, but it's not truly about me. Right now in this time, I feel compelled to bring people back to the conversation as the industry is in the state that it is, with so many people needing that exposure, that opportunity to show who they are. I feel like that this is the time to re-engage the podcast and bring it back to talk about games in an approachable way, about it as a craft, as players, as creators, and as communities as a whole. And this is going to be, hopefully, a deeper and more welcoming conversation without gatekeeping or losing the joy of play. One of the first things I was told when I joined QA is good luck ever playing a game again, because then you just find all the bugs and you get caught up. And how did that get through? How did that get through? Why was that allowed to happen? And it's a trained response because you learn to look for it. But we're going to find a way to get through that and keep engaging, keep having fun, and keep finding that joy of play. Now, this is just an introductory episode. So this is just talking about the show. This is going to be a brief conversation starter and some ways for you to engage with the podcast going forward. But what future episodes will include, and will be changing formats and topics regularly so that it's never going to be quite the same thing, or if we get into a good pattern of what is working for everyone to engage with and be a part of, I hope to include definitely interviews with game developers, community members, roundtables where we're having multiple voices come in and talk about something very specific. We'll do production and design conversations, as that's what I know most, but maybe we'll throw down with a UI artist and designer and go through that onboarding flow and see what that's like to talk through and experiment with. We're going to do reviews with games, and indie spotlights, one of my favorite things, and the thing that has grown so much is my Steam wish list with more than 80 indie games that I've just followed over time, and all of them I'm really excited for what they bring to the table. So knowing that there's more games than ever coming out on Steam every week, every day, we're going to have no shortage of games to discuss and figure that out. So in addition, we're going to have whiteboard sessions. Maybe we as a community and we'll get creative and we'll make something together, whether it's just on a whiteboard. Maybe we throw some AI in there as well, just to play and get a concept out so that we have visual evidence of building something together. And of course, what would a conversation about the joy of play be without actually playing, right? So we'll play some games, we'll do some live streams. Some of this will be pre-recorded. We're just going to wing it and fly with it, and I'll do my best to communicate what's coming next, what's going on, and how we can all join together. There's, of course, social media that you'll be able to connect with me, and I'll share more of that at the end. For the most part, we want to give guests room to share what they're making, what excites them, and where people can find them. We want to be connecting gamers with gamers, creators with creators, and start building more community as we need to adapt to this new industry and the new way people are choosing to engage with games. We can't stay stagnant, and the conversation has to change. So why not here? When we think about what games bring to the table and how they can connect us together, competition, cooperation, creativity, friendship, identity, and belonging, all of those things, they ground us in a bit of our humanity, even if it's not sitting on the couch together, even if it's telling stories after we've gone to work or gone to school, and we have to share those stories even though someone else wasn't there to witness it. Our shared communication, our language, we get to have those experiences and share that. It could end up being one of those failed raid boss attempts, and that becomes a joke. That becomes a story. That becomes a named maneuver that you say, let's not do that again. One case in point, I was at Wargaming and we were doing a long, extensive playtest, and there was one round where one of our lead designers ended up doing 0 damage, 0 frags, 0 assists, blown out in the first minute of the round, and it was decided in that moment that was then called pulling a rocket, named after the designer who did it. So that is now something that gets thrown around, or was thrown around before the studio was closed, about every playtest afterwards, warning, you're about ready to pull a rocket. Those kind of moments, those kind of discoverable shared community moments are exactly the kind of things that bring us together. They happen in live games all the time with your guilds or with your friends, and they happen by yourself that then you just share, whether it's online on your YouTube channel or your Twitch channel or whatever, or just with the people that you gather with on a regular basis. So we're going to build off of that, and that's what games really bring to the table for me. It gives us identity. When your nation's flag, when your ethnicity, when your heritage can be represented, you get pulled in. It's why diversity and inclusivity is so important in telling games, and having different origins of where those games are coming from allows us to experience more of what it is to see another person's perspectives and also connect with them and share, hey, I might have felt something different. I might have had a different experience. But ultimately, we are having the same sense of play, and we're going to learn more about each other by understanding that and working through, whether it's that cooperative collaboration in a game or competition. We're going to learn more about another person by playing with them than if we don't know anything else about them and try and engage with them. I personally feel strongest about games when it feels like they have a grounded intention and an identity of their own that doesn't say we're going to make this game for everybody, because when you start making something for everybody, you're not really making it for anybody. It's just kind of there, from my opinion. So when I pick up a new game or I see a new trailer, I always end up asking myself, who is this for and what is it trying to do? And not every game needs to serve everyone. It doesn't have to be that way. We see that so much with live operations games and games with battle passes and extended modes and more and more and more to it. But it doesn't always land, and it doesn't have that grand appeal anymore. You find hyper-focused areas, maybe, but then when you find those hyper-focused areas, you know that there's other competitors in that same realm. So is that game that's really spread out really capturing the attention? Is it really doing anything with true authenticity, or is it just kind of there to pull people in and make them part of the game's ecosystem, to substantiate the whales of the community with when most of those games have monetization patterns that are for that purpose alone. So I really end up evaluating these things, and when I say a game isn't for me, it's different from saying that the game is bad. Some of those design patterns can be bad for your mental health, for your wallet, for being more gambling than game, but we still have to evaluate if a game isn't just bad from some ethical standpoint, it can just be not for me. And that's why I want to talk about games and how we talk about them, how we're going to discuss them in this group, and how we criticize games. We're going to have some butting head moments about opinions. I mean, the console wars idea has been so big for so long, and now with this conversation of exclusives coming back, we might be having round number 1700 of these kind of Xbox is better than PlayStation, better than Nintendo, or whoever your favorite fighter is, basically. But in our community, in this community, in the summoning hour, we're going to be praising specifically what we like. We're going to critique thoughtfully, and we're going to assume good intent of one another and of the developers and where the community is reacting. We'll talk about the choices and the trade-offs instead of attacking, because we want to know if a game is just not for me, or if it has those design patterns and elements that are not kind of healthy. But we need to be able to talk together and hopefully make games better, either for ourselves with different settings, different approaches, different mindsets even. A shift in perspective can go a long ways to enjoying a new session or looking at a game differently. League of Legends was one of those games for me. So when we have games with intention and we have how we want to thoughtfully critique games and evaluate games and talk about them, I have a few examples to share. For me, Hollow Knight is committed to its identity through and through, and is one of the strongest Metroidvania experiences I've ever experienced. You could go back to games like Shadow Complex, which was also above its own weight class and a great example of what that genre can look like. But Hollow Knight was the complete package for me. Now, the tight combat, intense combat, and the tight movements required, that's obviously not going to be for everyone. The kind of atmospheric storytelling where it's loose and very investigative, and you have to really lean into it and find all those secrets and join a community and track things down and be 100% invested if you're going to discover all the little loose ends that can happen if you just play through the game and just play through the story. So it's got its strengths and its approaches of how it is appealing. For me, I go more the Arkham Asylum route where, yes, you could go for all the collectibles that you want, you can go for all the secrets, and it kind of points you in the right direction to go pursue those things, or when you can come back and go get those things. And less Metroidvania, but more about the collection and the experience of getting all the extras to 100% the game, a completionist game versus a tight game like Hollow Knight. Not to say Arkham Asylum wasn't tight, we all know it is. A game that wasn't for me was the Animal Crossing New Horizons. Clearly meaningful to its audience, and even though it's fun and it can connect you with friends, the mechanics, the building, the customization, the story to it, the motivations to keep going and go through it, it wasn't quite for me. And I found some other cozy games that are more my style, but that one, super popular, a great Switch seller, but again, not quite for me in its tone and execution. It's not a bad game, just not for me. And I could go item by item, mechanic by mechanic, and really highlight that. But you get where I'm going. Another great example of identity, of intention for me is Heroes of the Storm. They had strong ideas pulled between accessibility, simplicity, replayability, and in a hyper competitive genre market, along with its esports aspirations. It was a little bit of everything, and it couldn't quite pull it together. Now, it had its dedicated fan base, but on the business end, it wasn't quite cutting mustard for them. I think it was still a very successful game. I think it was good at what it did, but no, it wasn't going to pull off a League of Legends kind of global phenomenon. It wasn't going to compete with Dota 2's global influence. It was late to the party. That doesn't help its case, but for what it was good. It just didn't have the mass appeal that the business wanted, from my opinion. So that's intention. And we're going to start looking at games that have identity. We're going to look at games that are new. A lot of those indie games that I mentioned that are on my wish list have a strong identity. Are they 500-hour open world explorative deep dive where it requires absolute mastery? Absolutely not. Maybe there's one or two in there that is one of its selling points is its scale and depth. But for the most part, I want that experience. I want that clear connective idea and tissue that connects all of its execution together. A great example of of a game that just, for me, just hits on all threads and the engine never stops running the entire game. Expedition 33. I think it's one of the most complete games I've played in a really long time. So that kind of conversation and looking at that complete package is absolutely the kind of conversation I want to break down. Why was Expedition 33 so well polished and so well received? And what was it about its timing that really made it land? We can go into all of that, and I would love that conversation, honestly. Bringing it all back around. Games connecting with people. My story is maybe not too dissimilar from yours. Growing up, I moved a lot as a kid. I think I counted it up. I had 9 or 10 different schools throughout my K through 12 careers, and that was across states and multiple moves within states. And I never really got to stay with a school or a graduating class or anything like that for more than a year or two. I didn't get to build those communities or those long-term locational roots and getting to know a culture and a region very well, but I did get to know games. Games came with me. Baseball came with me, but games was where I spent way more of my time, and those games connected me online from a very early age, whether it was MSN Gaming Zone and playing Age of Empires online, or if it was using the GameSpy server browser for games of Quake, Quake 2, Quake 3, Team Fortress Classic, so on and so forth, all the early 90s games, and connecting with people online from a very early time. I was even doing TCP/IP games of Doom with my brother, and that was in like 92, 93. So having 2 computers back then was kind of crazy, right? I've always had that connection with people in games. My dad had a Commodore 64, and I would play Rampage on that, and I was always competing or being destructive to my brother and getting in the way or making mischief and seeing what we can do. And from there, like I said, PC stuff. I had an NES, a Game Boy, a Genesis, so on and so forth. Always games were a part of my life. And even so much as playing text-based adventures online in MUDs. I used to play one called Tub Mud that was hosted by the University of Berlin from their computer science department. And so I was playing with people in Germany. People around the world would connect to that text-based online adventure, and it was a huge connection point. And again, I got to take that from states like Oklahoma and Virginia and back to Washington to be connected with a community that was long-term, and it was a well-known MUD for its time. These games gave me my digital roots while I was moving schools and cities, and my friend circles were changing, my social structures were changing perpetually. So having some roots gave me a grounding in my own identity and gave me a purpose to drive and dive into games as much as I have. Which brings me back around to you. I want to make this a conversation. The episode is not going to end here. When I sign off, when you stop listening, the conversation is going to continue. It's going to continue on the Discord server, which you'll find in the show notes. I have all of the social media links there. When we do live streams, it'll be on Twitch. Recorded videos will go onto YouTube. Live streams will also go to YouTube. So plenty of opportunities for us to connect, but the main driving point is going to be the Discord, because there's going to be discussion threads hosted per episode with different topics there, we got a couple conversations to have this week. The community prompts for this episode specifically come up as what game brought you together with other people and why was it special? I told you the story of TubMud. I've told you, you've gotten a sense maybe of some of the other games that I've played and some of the moments that I've had as a developer. What are your favorite memories? What are your favorite moments? What are some of those things that brought you closer to your friends? And as it was just this past weekend, we had the Summer Game Fest showcase. Tons of games announced, tons of games given some additional details on. I'm curious what showcase announcements deserve specific praise and which announcements do you want to question and kind of go in on because it didn't come across strong or it didn't resonate with you, or what were you hoping for with a game announcement like that? Something that built up but then didn't quite feel right. How did you feel about the showcase overall? I know I have my opinions, and having been through some of the tough times and the industry as it is, and looking at some of those games, I go, why? Where did this come from? Who is it for? And really wanting to dive in and understand that. So I look forward to having that conversation with you. Aside, other questions about the showcase, what are you generally feeling excited about? What felt clear and intentional? And if you were as cynical or skeptical as I was on certain things, why was that? In closing, this episode is just the beginning. This is one of the few recorded videos I'm looking to do. Like I said earlier, we want interviews. We want roundtables. We're going to do whiteboard sessions. We're going to do feature breakdowns. We'll take a game and take a part that somebody likes and ask the question about. I'll get an expert in. We'll dissect it, break it down. I could help produce it, break it down what it would look like in a project management software. And we'll go from there. We can really go as in-depth as you want. I intend on going there. I hope you'll join me along the way. And of course, always connect in the Discord server or on social media where you are comfortable. I look forward to continuing the conversation. I'm so excited to be bringing the summoning hour back and looking forward to engaging with all of you all over again and bringing more awareness and more conversation to video games because they are what they mean to us. And hopefully you're as passionate about it as I am, and look forward to having those deeper conversations. Thanks, everyone, and we will see you soon for the next episode. If you're watching one of the video podcasts, the QR code on the screen will take you to my link tree, which gives you access to my Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and all my other social media links as well. But if you are listening somewhere, but you found this through a link from a friend, but you're looking to get your own subscription on your favorite podcast listening service, you can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Deezer.